I'm very pleased to welcome back my next guest, Larry Klayman. Larry, how are you?
Great, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's always a pleasure to see you, Larry. I look forward to our conversations. Your insights are always spot on, your legal expertise. I feel like I can't get this anywhere else. So I'm pleased to have you with me today.
Very nice to say. I'm flattered. Thank you, Jason.
It's been quite a week, Larry. I mean, we've all been watching the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. Many people saw Laura Loomer get auctioned out of there earlier today. That was quite crazy. She's always up to something very interesting. But I wanted to talk to you first about that, about Kavanaugh, because you've told us in the past you've got some prior experience with Brett Kavanaugh, and you were very unhappy with his performance. As I recall, you described it as unconstitutional. He was somehow for universal spying. What was the background there?
Well, just as a little lead-in, my biggest problem with Kavanaugh is that he's part of the Washington swamp. He's part of this club. And that's why you see Democrats like Bob Bennett, who defended Clinton during the Jones case many years ago, and why you see people on the Republican side all coming to his support, because they want their friend as a Supreme Court justice. They're practicing lawyers, and they think that that gives them an advantage when they're in court. That's one point. But the biggest problem I have with Kavanaugh, we can get to others later, is that he has little to no respect for the Fourth Amendment. Is that I had filed lawsuits 3 and 4 years ago against the NSA, the CIA, and the Director of National Intelligence under Obama for this mass surveillance against the American people. Edward Snowden revealed that. And later I got whistleblowers to come in that confirmed that and even added to what Snowden had said. And I succeeded in getting preliminary injunctions against these intelligence agencies saying that they had to stop this mass surveillance, which was without probable cause, that a crime was being committed or that there were communications with terrorists. Well, what happened with that, to our credit, is that provoked a new law called the USA Freedom Act, which was supposed to alleviate these problems. But it didn't. I mean, we know that it continued on. We know what happened with President Trump and the illegal surveillance of the Trump Tower.
Right.
I have been continued to be surveyed. My clients have been surveilled continuously, illegally. I know that. We have another lawsuit pending on that. To make the long story short, the Obama Justice Department went to the appellate court after I got those preliminary injunctions and said, well, we have this new law, so therefore these preliminary injunctions are moot. You don't need them anymore. We've got a new law. And what was ironic and frightening, frankly, is that the panel that I got had 2 Clinton and Obama appointees, and one of the other appointees, the third, was Kavanaugh. And the liberal appointees said, okay, it's moot. Okay, we're vacating these preliminary injunction orders. It didn't end the case, but they vacated, that is, nullified the preliminary injunction orders. And Kavanaugh went along with that, and then he wrote a decision gratuitously. He didn't have to write it. And that's one of the rules of judicial construction is if you don't have to say something, don't say it. But he wrote an opinion which said that he thought this mass surveillance was perfectly fine.
Wow.
You see? And what he was doing is he was trying to curry favor with those elements of the Washington establishment that find nothing wrong with this. And it's actually, frankly, more on the establishment Republican side than even on the Democrat side. It's one of the things about being a conservative that I'm not consistent with some of my so-called brethren, because they're more inclined for police power than even the left is in some ways in this area. So I thought he really sold out. And if I was going to write my book, Whores Again, maybe Whores 2, at Amazon.com, I think he must be in the early chapter here. And then I'm listening to him during the hearing, Jason. And he says, Roe v. Wade is settled law. Okay? I mean, the evangelical community is going crazy tonight, I'm sure. He said that because it was convenient to say that. And there are a number of other things that he bent over to try to placate the left. Now, I understand he's got to get confirmed. And at this point, although I wished President Trump had picked another nominee, it's too late now. And, he's the lesser of evils, because if he's derailed now, Trump will probably not get another chance to appoint anyone, given everything else that's going on right now with Robert Mueller and and the fact that impeachment's on the horizon potentially with a Democrat House of Representatives, and the Democrats will try to run out the clock. So, you know, I hope the guy does get confirmed, but he certainly is not the best judge that President Trump could have chosen. And the fact that he has zero respect for the Fourth Amendment, it appears, is a huge, huge problem. That's one of the major reasons why we started the revolution, why we signed the Declaration of Independence, is that King George III was busting into the homes of colonialists, stealing their property,
right,
assaulting their families, raping their women, and violating their rights of privacy. And this is a legitimate right of privacy. It's not like Roe v. Wade, which was manufactured by the Supreme Court, Harry Blackmun, whose daughter I went to law school with. There's no right of privacy for abortion in the Constitution. And here this conservative judge is sold out on that too. So, you know, it's the best of the worst. That's the bottom line.
I'm glad to get that detailed explanation from you, because I was surprised when I saw you on on Newsmax this morning that you had said, okay, let's get him confirmed already, because I knew that you were pretty negative on him. And of course, for people who aren't immediately familiar, the Fourth Amendment is the right to privacy in your home and your person. And now, obviously, Kavanaugh is very pro having the NSA or whatever secretive agency scan all our emails and our cell phones and everything. And I believe the whistleblower case that you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, that was Bill Binney and his crew? Was it those guys from the NSA?
Actually, I represented them at one time. But I had another whistleblower who doesn't want me to use his name right now.
Got it.
Because he's been worked over. But he had even more information than Binney. Binney, you know, is a good guy, but this is way back what Binney had. This was much more current information. That Supreme Court justices, the Chief Justice, was being surveilled.
It's crazy.
Other justices, even Ginsburg, was being surveilled. 156 judges, Donald Trump. Anybody who was critical of the government or who was a major businessman that perhaps this deep state intelligence, racketeering enterprise, for lack of a better word, could extort, they were being surveilled. And they even got my banking records back in 2007. A whistleblower revealed that to me. And obviously I'm a big thorn in the side of the government, both sides, Democrat and Republican. So that's that. And what I said on Newsmax is what I said here, but I had less time to say it, is that, yes, I would not have chosen, but at this point, because of the dynamics of everything that's going on, he's the lesser of evils. And I do believe that, ironically, the leftist judges on that court will take the position that this is a gross violation of the Fourth Amendment, and you get a couple conservatives and they'll cancel out Justice Kavanaugh.
Well, it's an interesting thing to see it play out. Everybody seems pretty convinced that Kavanaugh will be confirmed. Now, you said that impeachment may be on the horizon and a Democratic House is possible. You're saying it's just right now unknown, or you feel that might happen?
Well, I don't want to make absolute predictions, because obviously we saw that Donald Trump was elected in 2016 and everyone thought by the polls that he was going to lose. I didn't. I mean, I believe that God would intervene. Somebody asked me a question on a show the other day. Well, Larry, you wouldn't be happy if Jesus Christ was defending Donald Trump. I was critical of Trump's lawyers. They're doing a poor job, in my opinion.
Right.
And I said, well, you know what? I think Jesus did actually intervene in the last election. He could have had Hillary Clinton. So I think he may have been somewhat favorable towards President Trump.
You think Jesus might be a better lawyer than Rudy Giuliani?
Well, I think somebody in their first year out of law school would probably be doing a better job right now. But this is the problem: is the president's been worked into a corner. He has a lot of options. He had a lot of options. Why isn't he provoking a grand jury subpoena by Mueller, taking that up to the Supreme Court, and getting the Supreme Court to potentially rule that Mueller's investigation is illegal, or he's going too far, or something to that effect? Why isn't he suing for all the illegal surveillance that was conducted upon him, his family, and his colleagues? Why isn't he bringing a case like I did against these intelligence agencies to open everything up. And I know that Mueller was probably involved in it too. Like Comey for sure. The FBI was doing this illegal surveillance. He hasn't fought back. He's just been taking punches. And that's what really scares me. And then this latest information that leaked out yesterday, that Mueller may be satisfied with written questions, that the investigation's ending. I mean, Jay Sekulow is a nice guy. I like him. He's a good religious rights lawyer. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing as a criminal defense lawyer. He maybe was a assistant public defender or prosecutor for a few years in his early life, but he doesn't have a deep experience. And he says, okay, this thing's ending. We think it's ending. You know why it's ending? Why Mueller wants to get it over with? Because he wants to issue an interim impeachment report like Ken Starr did back in the Clinton years that will provoke the Democrats, will allow the Democrats to win the midterm elections so that they can take over the House of Representatives and impeach the president. I mean, he's smart like a fox. He wants to get this thing over with because he wants to issue a impeachment report. He knows that he can't indict the president in all likelihood, so that's what they're going for. And it's getting really nasty and it's vicious. And the president's lawyers, Giuliani, who goes on TV, after a couple drinks, and frankly, is getting up there in years. I don't think he has it together. He can't even keep his facts straight. And then you got Sekulow, doesn't know what he's doing. And this president's getting dragged along to the guillotine.
Yeah.
As if we're the French Revolution.
Larry, a lot of people have been speaking about the tactics that Robert Mueller is employing, and it was really fascinating for me to observe you in court with Emmett Sullivan. I think a lot of people, were very removed from Washington, D.C., were very removed from the legal process, and it's sort of this judiciary black hole for most people who are sitting at home. But it was interesting to me that Emmett Sullivan is not only the judge presiding over your FOIA case that could bring Robert Mueller to his knees if it does in fact prove that he was illegally leaking grand jury information. Emmett Sullivan is the same judge presiding over the Michael Flynn case, and a lot of people have speculated that Mueller has been delaying the sentencing of Michael Flynn because, as you've just pointed out, everything he's doing is sort of a political chess move to get this crap sort of over the plate in time to sway this midterm election. What can we say about what happened with Emmett Sullivan and your ongoing FOIA case against the special counsel's office?
This judge was first appointed to the Superior Court by, I believe it was George Bush, the dad. He later was appointed to the federal court by Bill Clinton. And he's probably the only Clinton-appointed judge or Obama-appointed judge in this particular court, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, that has integrity and is intellectually honest. I can tell you that. These other judges might not like me to say that, but frankly, the rest of the Democrat judges over there have little to no integrity, and a lot of them are simply political hacks. Judge Sullivan is different. And when I appeared in front of him, and you were there at the time, Jason, thank you for coming and watching, is that I was seeking to get the communications through a Freedom of Information Act complaint that I had to file when the government didn't respond. That is the Justice Department, Robert Mueller's office, and the FBI. Mueller's communications with the media. And I'm convinced that those communications will show illegal criminal grand jury leaks for the last year and a half since this Russian collusion and obstruction of justice investigation began. And the government was saying, oh, we'll produce this sometime in the future. They weren't giving any dates. This was the Justice Department under Jeff Sessions, by the way.
Crazy.
Yeah, and most of the lawyers under Sessions are Democrats, and most of them are leftists. 97% voted for Hillary Clinton. He has no control of his department. He's just sits there, I guess, twiddling his thumbs all day long, Sessions.
No, he indicted 2 Republican congressmen the other day.
We'll get to that next. So I say to Sullivan, I said, they have to produce this stuff timely. This case is already 8 months old. Yeah. And so hard about producing records about communications with the media. They're not exempt because it's public by definition. And I got Judge Sullivan to say that all the records had to be produced, all the documents, by September 4th. Now, I predicted this, Jason. is that just a few days before September 4th, the Sessions Justice Department lawyer comes back and says, oh, there's been a computer glitch. We need an extension of time.
Huh.
Yeah, a convenient computer glitch. Now, we've heard that before. There was a computer glitch back in the late 90s and the early 2000s with Hillary Clinton with 1 million emails that weren't produced.
Perhaps they still have Imran Awan working the IT department, Larry.
Right. But how convenient. So I've asked the judge to hold an evidentiary hearing. He hasn't ruled upon that yet. He did grant them an extension until the 12th of September to give a fuller explanation of what's going on. And this, frankly, is obstruction of justice, I believe. It's another example of this corrupt Justice Department, now run by Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, themselves obstructing justice. It's become a cesspool of corruption. And I predicted it all along that they would pull this stunt at the last minute. Now, I did get some documents that they produced yesterday to me. I've got to go through them. I doubt there's anything in there of great import, but I'm going to go through them this evening. And it's just a small fraction of the 10,000 documents or records that they said existed. And the documents they produced before that, very limited number, were only communications by the press to the FBI. There was nothing coming back from the FBI to the press, so they obviously withheld those documents. This Justice Department is so inherently corrupt. The president's absolutely right, and he needs to start taking action and just not talking and tweeting. He needs to fire Sessions, or at least force his resignation. He needs to force the resignation of Rosenstein. He needs to clean house over there. It's a rat's nest.
Yeah.
And the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, is a joke. He needs to go too. And it's really sad when the Justice Department, through Sessions, is actually making an effort. We'll get to the next issue you just raised. Sessions wants to see the president impeached and removed because he's now the darling of the left. I mean, look at the Huffington Post, look at the Daily Beast, read any of these leftist publications, and Washington Post, he's now the hero of the left.
It's crazy.
Because of what he's doing. And now, you know, he didn't have to indict these 2 congressmen now. It should have been done earlier, so there would have been time to get somebody else to run as Republicans who might have a chance to win. But by doing it this late, he's likely going to reduce the so-called Republican majority by 2, and that could be the difference between the Democrats taking control of Congress in the midterm elections or not, and that could be the difference in having impeachment voted out by a Democrat House of Representatives. Sessions is corrupt to the core. He is cowardly. And we know, of course, what he did with Bundy. Just recently, his prosecutors appealed the Bundy dismissal, which was even done by a Harry Reid Obama judge.
That was terrible. Yeah.
You know, so this guy is just, I don't know the words to describe what he is. But I listened to Jeanine Pirro on Fox last week, and you know she really rips him, and I think that was good. But then she says at the end, well, if he's not going to do his job, he should resign. Well, you know what? It's too late to do your job. You've already done tremendous damage.
It's
and
true.
That's typical of you know, some commentators that want to maintain some link to what's going on. But you know, he needs to go, and he needs to be fired. Frankly, he needs to be prosecuted, and we will prosecute him with our citizens' grand juries. He's the worst of the worst, Jason.
Right.
He's worse. Frankly, he's worse than Eric Holder. He's worse than Janet Reno, because he is a traitor, and the president apparently called him that. At least if any part of Woodward's book is true, and I believe that part probably is.
Well, we're going to talk about Bob Woodward in a moment, and I'm glad that you brought up the citizens' grand juries. That's still there on freedomwatchusa.org. People can click on the Justice League graphic to support the effort. Of course, we've got our legal superhero, Klayman, right there at the forefront of the Justice League. It really is important that people go to freedomwatchusa.org and financially support the work that Larry is doing. I mean, all you've got to do is listen to what he's saying for just a few minutes. It's absolutely true. It's a travesty what's happened to the Bundys. And, you know, everybody's on and on with this QAnon stuff, trust Sessions. I mean, you're right. every time I think like, well, let's give him a chance. You know, people are saying that President Trump and Jeff Sessions have some kind of, you know, underground plan they're working on where they need to look like enemies. I don't know if I believe that.
No, and you know, Dan Bongino, who's on Fox a lot, is a very bright guy. I was listening to him coming into my office so I could do this show. He's doing Mark Levin's show today. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he has everything laid out, and it's perfect, and he's very smart. And he was former Intel himself at one time, a federal agent. Mm-hmm. Then he says, well, let's give this guy Huber in Utah a chance, because, you know, Sessions said, oh, he's going to investigate, you know, Hillary Clinton's Russian collusion, his email scandal. Let's give him a chance and not call for a special counsel yet. Well, you know what? You can forget about a U.S. attorney taking any strong action here. They're political animals. That's how they got their job. And Sessions dumped it off on him so they could bury it. And I like Dan Bongino. But, you know, again, people try to keep their hand in the till. He's probably out there, you know, doing security work, doing private investigation work. He doesn't want to totally alienate the Justice Department or the FBI. So, yeah, let's wait for Uber. We don't have time to wait. The president is in a cart headed for the guillotine right now. And we've got to save this president, because after him, it's much worse. You know, I like Pence. He's a nice guy. And I agree with a lot of what he says, but he's establishment. When he was governor of Indiana, he sold out on a number of issues important to conservatives, and he could never be elected. I mean, you know, I like the guy, but his demeanor is like a piece of wood. And if the president winds up getting impeached and convicted, you can forget about him winning the next election.
But what would they impeach him for, Larry? This Russian collusion, there seems to be just zero evidence. I mean, they've got Manafort on embezzling or tax crimes that happened in early 2000s before he ever worked for Trump. They've got Michael Cohen pleading out to something that maybe he didn't even do or maybe wasn't even a crime. What could President Trump be impeached for, let's say, next week?
Well, in today's world, and this is why we have our citizens' grand juries, where we're going to indict Mueller, where we're going to indict Hillary Clinton, we're going to indict Comey, we're going to indict Obama's intelligence czars, Brennan and Clapper.
Right.
We're going to indict Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, all of them, okay? We, the American people, need to take legal action ourselves, and we have that right to do it, as I've said many times. But in today's world, with regard to the justice system, you know, anything goes. I mean, you know, I listened to Kavanaugh today saying, oh, I'm independent, you know, I'm going to be appointed for life as a Supreme Court justice. I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. I mean, what world does he live in? Is that I have friends who are judges, and they've told me, some of them, I figure out what I want to do, and then I go out and find the law, quote unquote, to do it. Okay? This is the way it is on both sides. And there is no such thing as the law. It doesn't exist. It's whatever the judge thinks it is, and whatever he or she wants to impose on the parties in front of him or her. And the same thing is true with impeachment. Congress can impeach for any reason.
Wow.
They can impeach with an allegation that President Trump had an affair with a horse, you know?
And paid the horse $130,000.
There was a Woody Allen movie, so I took it from there, you know. I think it was his first one, Take the Money and Run. He was accused of making love to a horse. They could actually do that because there's no standard for impeachment. It's a political remedy.
Wow.
And Trump may be able to withstand conviction in the Senate, as Clinton did, but it'll grind this country to a halt, and it will severely impair his chances of being reelected.
Well, sadly, that seems to be what they are intent on doing. I also found it curious that Mr. Mueller's computers were working sufficiently well to issue a subpoena to Dr. Corsi, of all people. Now, what are the implications of this for Dr. Corsi? I was texting with him earlier today, and obviously he didn't seem too pleased about this, but why are they subpoenaing Dr. Corsi, and what can Dr. Corsi expect from this closed-door question and answer hearing that he's going to be in about his connections to Roger Stone and alleged connections to WikiLeaks?
That's what I think it probably is. I haven't talked to Jerry Corsi lately. I did represent him years back in a case against Esquire magazine. They defamed him over a book where he wrote about the fraudulent birth certificate of Obama. He's a good man, but they're squeezing, and it tells you that the Mueller investigations proceeding ahead, contrary to what Sekulow predicted. He's now made about 10 predictions that it was going to end over the last year and a half. It's just not true. And I think what you're going to get is an interim impeachment report, which Ken Starr did, and he will continue on even past the midterm elections. More.
Wow, that's crazy. You know, and of course, speaking of defaming, the New York Times, the left-wing rag that it is, has come out with this article where right away they just say Jerome Corsi, a conspiracy theorist. So it's amazing how these insults they don't wear out. Since 1963, when the CIA decided to weaponize this term, they just keep using it again and again. They choose an unflattering photo of the doctor, and they're here trying to already Maggie Haberman trying to convict Dr. Corsi in the court of public opinion before he's even had a chance to speak. It really is quite despicable.
She's a despicable, Maggie Haberman. And, where's the conspiracy? They're creating a conspiracy with regard to President Trump, Russia, and obstruction of justice.
Exactly.
I used to have a bumper sticker in the kitchen of Judicial Watch, and I had it on the refrigerator. It said, Clinton happens. Clinton happens. Okay? And I don't want to use an off-color word here, but yes, conspiracies happen. And all it is are two people or more acting in concert to commit a crime, and that happens all the time. So I'm proud to be called a conspiracy theorist. And when people used to ask me, Larry, do you believe there's a great right-wing conspiracy like Hillary Clinton said? And my response was, only if we're doing it right,
Well, of course, we've heard about a number of conspiracies. Peter Strzok texting with Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe working with, what's his name, Terry McAuliffe to finance the campaign of his wife. These are people working together to defy laws like the Hatch Act and conspire to achieve some illegal goal. So it's not just a conspiracy theory, they're actual conspiracies. Let me shift gears with you for a moment, Larry, and let's talk about this big dust-up over social media. You've got a civil suit that you've just launched, a class action suit, if I'm not mistaken, against Facebook, Twitter, Google. Some of these representatives of these tech giants were there on the Hill today. We had Sheryl Sandberg and Jack Dorsey. Very conspicuously absent were any representatives of Google, the owners of YouTube. So what can you tell us about the class action suit that you've brought, and what do we expect Congress to do about any of this?
Well, let me go backwards on that one. I'll answer the last question first. Congress is not going to do anything. In fact, what I understand today from the reports, I didn't watch the hearing, I was out with a client, but they were very light on these social media moguls. Okay? Why is that? Because these people can bring, these social media CEOs and the companies can bring these politicians down, you see? They're afraid of them. They are afraid of them. The same reason that they're afraid of the intel agencies, because the intel agencies are the deep state that has dirt on virtually everybody on the Capitol. That's why nothing ever happens. In fact, they have it on everybody. So that's number one. Number two, the president himself made a reference the other day that he thought that this was an antitrust violation, what these social media companies are doing.
Right.
What happened with Freedom Watch, among many other things, like other conservative organizations, is that once it became clear that we were supporting President Trump and doing whatever we could as, in effect, his legal defense lawyers, even though I don't have any connection, but we're doing it in a matter of the public interest, YouTube put a limitation, a governor, on our growth for subscribers. We've been at around 49,000 subscribers now for many months, and it goes up to near 50, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. Now, we're making a lot of news. We're doing a lot of really good things. Citizens' grand juries, this case that we're going to talk about in a second, our class action lawsuit. I filed a case in my private capacity today for Judge Roy Moore against Sacha Baron Cohen. I'm out there. So there's no way that we're not gaining subscribers. And this is happening to a lot of conservative organizations. Plus, Twitter is discriminating. Facebook is discriminating. I have clients waiting in the wings to file lawsuits. So I took the lead because I felt we couldn't wait. So I made Freedom Watch the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit that we brought against Google, YouTube, against Facebook, against Twitter, against Instagram, and Apple. And the theory of the case, and I think it's very solid. I'm a former antitrust lawyer, as you know, with the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. I helped break up the AT&T monopoly during the Reagan administration. When I was a young lawyer, I was on the trial team. I know a little bit about antitrust. And what you have here, it would appear, is a conspiracy, to get back to that, to restrain trade. It's an agreement and restraint of trade by these powerful social media companies. They've been colluding. They're all leftists. They want to install their leftist politicians in government. They want to see leftist governments in Washington, D.C. and throughout the 50 states. When they get their people in charge, they're going to get more perks, more favors. They'll become even richer than they are today. They're worth billions and trillions. And they have a leftist ideology. And even if there isn't an express agreement, the fact that they act in parallel, there is a concept called conscious parallelism in the antitrust law. And I sued under Sherman 1, Agreement and Restraint of Trade. Just as with price fixing, when you see prices move in tandem among competitors, you can prove price fixing. You can also do that, in my view, with regard to an agreement and restraint of trade in this context. So I brought a lawsuit under Sherman 1 of the antitrust laws, and I believe it's powerful. And by the grace of God, and I'm not saying this is a guarantee for success, it was assigned to a recent Trump appointee on the court, Judge McFadden. So I believe at least I'll get a fair hearing, because if this case had wound up in front of some Obama or Clinton judge, forget it. So right. God was looking in on us.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it, because at the very least it's going to put pressure on some of these companies, and we've seen them do some things. I mean, this touches a lot of people. Crowdsource the Truth has been having some problems with YouTube and Twitter and some of these other things. And as I was watching the hearing today, there was a lot of interesting terminology being thrown around, because I agree with you that there is collusion going on. Alex Jones gave sort of an impromptu press conference in the hallway there, and was talking about how all these companies have admitted that they acted simultaneously within 24 hours to deplatform him, that the New York Times was lobbying for this to be done. And we know that all these companies are sort of, it's a very small group of extremely rich guys. Jeff Bezos with the Washington Post, Carlos Slim with the New York Times, and of course these guys are on the boards of and invested in all of these gigantic companies. It's really quite scary how they can control the flow of information, and they allow outside parties to come in, and they are not taking adequate measures to prevent that from happening. Another thing I found very strange about the hearings, Larry, they basically were not wavering from this presumption that there was Russian interference. They kept asking them, what are you going to do to stop foreign actors from intervening with elections? My question was, what are you going to do to stop domestic actors from intervening with elections, or from gang stalking people online, or cyber harassing people, doxing people, releasing their information, putting out false accusations to destroy people's reputations, destroy people's businesses? This is a serious thing, and we're in the Wild West right now.
How evil this is. And I back up a little bit. The fact that you have these statements in the media by the CEOs of these social media companies is a way that they can communicate without actually signing an agreement saying, oh, I'm agreeing to restrain trade. You'll never find that. You have to prove it through circumstantial evidence for the most part, and conduct. But I'll tell you something. Years ago, I brought a lawsuit against Facebook. You might remember that they allowed the third intifada page of the Palestinians to stay up on their website for several weeks. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, begged Zuckerberg, who happens to be Jewish, I'm ashamed to say, the Jewish left, okay, who are frankly more destructive to the Jewish people than anything else. He allowed this to stay up for about 3 weeks, and it called for death to Jews. It called for death to Christians, and people were killed, and he has blood on his hands. And I brought a lawsuit, and there was, some kind of an exemption in the law, in the telecommunications law, which the liberal DC Circuit, found was not actionable. But they've been doing this kind of evil stuff for a very long time. And now they're trying to bring down the President of the United States. It's clear.
Larry, are you talking about, I had spoken to a lawyer about, how can YouTube allow people to come to my apartment and instruct people to attack me and stuff? And a lawyer told me that there is a component of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that treats these services like a network. So in other words, if someone calls you up and makes a death threat, you can't go sue Verizon because they used a Verizon phone. But Verizon's not going there and like listening to every call and saying, well, Larry's call can't go through, but Jason's call is okay. It just all goes through, and whatever's on the call is up to people to deal with. There seems to be a substantial difference with the way YouTube and Facebook and Twitter get involved, evaluating on a case-by-case basis what tweets or what videos can stay and which ones must go. Shouldn't that eliminate this exemption and make them liable?
It should be eliminated, and Zuckerberg admitted in a hearing a while back that they're not just a platform, they're also, in fact, a news organization. They're a media organization. And as such, they're a public forum. And as such, they have to allow everybody free speech. They're being accorded that right, notwithstanding the antitrust violations. That's part of our complaint, too, which, by the way, you can see at freedomwatchusa.org. I hope people will contribute to us with tax-deductible contributions. We are going up against Goliath here. I mean, these are huge, huge, huge companies. And we need the help. I hope people will join the suit. It's a class action. Other conservative groups will come in either after the class is certified. They can even seek to come in now. We're in it for results. I'm not in this for Larry Klayman and to, promote myself here, because this is so dangerous, not just with regard to the First Amendment, but this is a concerted effort by the left to take control of this country. You have Antifa, Black Lives Matter, financed by George Soros, that self-hating Jew that took property away from his fellow Jews on the way to the ovens during World War II with his father, financing this stuff. You've got Obama orchestrating it from his house, his mansion in Kalorama. You've got the media moguls playing a role, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. It's a full court press to take the country down and refashion it as a leftist fascist state, a total controlled state. And then you got the intelligence agencies who are still controlled by the Obama left, who are trying to destroy Trump and everybody else. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. And the goal here is to take the country down and refashion it with a leftist leadership, and perhaps even further left than what we know to be left anymore in this country. Socialist, right. Communist, atheist, radical feminist, radical illegal immigrant, pro or anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment, pro-radical Muslim. I mean, these people, if you can believe this, they favor the Palestinians over Israel. Even our own people, the Jewish left in Hollywood and elsewhere, they'd rather see the Palestinians overrun Israel than Israel remain an independent state. That's my view. So, we are facing a war here. It's a war between left and right. One's going to win, one's going to lose, and we have to make sure peacefully and legally that we win. And that's why we have our citizens' grand juries, because somebody needs to hold these people accountable.
Absolutely, Larry. And people might find it hard to believe what you're saying, but we know that George Soros makes tons of money through foreign currency short sales when he collapses other countries. Who's to say they wouldn't do the same exact type of thing here in the United States? And just briefly, one more thing on those social media hearings. Sheryl Sandberg, who I guess is the chief operating officer of Facebook, spoke about their use of alternative facts to combat misinformation and fake news. And I mean, again, I can't help but thinking that these hearings are a stage play when you watch them, because suddenly it's okay for Facebook and this person to decide what is news or what is not news and what a fact is and what you should be looking at. I mean, it is crazy. If they want to be editing news in this way, then they should be liable for what appears on their website.
Right, and ask yourself this question, Jason. This gets back to this. They are violating the antitrust and competition laws. The European Union is more advanced than we are in this respect. They tailored their antitrust laws after World War II over American antitrust laws. But they have a concept called abuse of dominant position. Google's already been fined over $1 billion in Europe. Now, granted, the Europeans like to go after the American companies rather than their own.
Yeah.
But there's merit to this. And why is it that our antitrust division, again, Jeff Sessions sits on top of that, of the Justice Department. Why does it have to be Freedom Watch that takes this action and Larry Klayman? Why isn't the Justice Department doing something about it? Because, they have Sessions in their hip pocket. The left they own Sessions. He's under investigation by Mueller for Russian collusion, however specious. He's under investigation for obstruction of justice and the firing of Comey. He perjured himself in front of Congress when he said he didn't have any meetings with the Russian ambassador. I mean, the guy is dishonest to the core, and they probably have him on tape. He was probably wiretapped, along with others at the Trump Tower, and he's frightened to death, plus other dirt that they may have on him, the intelligence agencies and the FBI. So the guy is owned by the left, and so that's why there is a Freedom Watch. We are the People's Justice Department. My former group gets mostly documents. I bring hard-hitting cases. If I look tired, that's why. Because, who's going to do it if we don't do it? And that's why I hope people will support us at freedomwatchusa.org. We're your Justice League.
That's right. And I won't bug you about this, Larry, but I am still holding out hope that someday there can be some sort of a reconciliation, at least on a professional level, because I think that joining forces, Judicial Watch is bringing a lot of documents forward and a lot of people support them. So we won't discuss that now, but I know
that's not going to happen, Jason. I mean, I actually wrote something recently because people have asked me why I've been critical of Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch, but there are a lot of things they have done in the past to harm me and my family because they feared competition from me when I left to run for the U.S. Senate. It's beyond the pale, Jason. And I'll tell you, my honest opinion is Fitton is not a person of good character. I really believe that. And people need to understand why, because they don't understand it. You don't apparently understand it either.
Well, and, I do, but I just... I know how you feel when you get into a thing when somebody does stuff that you just can't get past. It is difficult, but yet I don't want to see you at odds with someone who seems to be on the same track. And like I said, I shouldn't have even brought it up. But
that's a fair point. I will agree with that. When they try to defame me with my family and things like that, I got a judgment against them in Florida back in 2014. You can't forget about those things.
Agreed. Let's talk about how people can get on board with the citizens' grand juries, and of course, how can people join this class action suit against social media companies? Because I know the Becks are doing a class action suit. Is that something that is helpful, or are they two separate? Like, what are the implications of that? Two different class action suits against Twitter, Facebook, Google.
I haven't studied this other one, but they're welcome to join ours, and we welcome the help. This is not an ego trip. This is trying to get results. I've been around a long time. I've been a lawyer for 41 years. I've proven that I'm a good lawyer. I've proven that I'll go up against the powerful interests. I'm the only lawyer ever to have a court rule that a president committed a crime. That was Bill Clinton when he released the Privacy Act protected files of Kathleen Willey, a woman he had sexually harassed in the Oval Office. I mean, I've done it all, Jason. I'm not here for me. Okay, I'm here because I believe that I'm serving some purpose, some godly purpose. I'm not Jesus Christ. I'm not Moses, but I am the servants of God, and I believe that they put me here to do what I think's right. Now, I'm not always right. I make mistakes for sure, but I welcome the help. I really do. Just like I welcome the contributions, I welcome the help from anybody that's sincere. And when I sued the NSA years ago, Rand Paul was very critical of the NSA and the mass surveillance, and I went to him and I said, Senator Paul, why don't we collaborate? And instead of collaborating, after I filed lawsuits of class action, he filed one. And then he claimed he was the first to file it. It was all political. And then he never did anything. He never did anything. And now with Kavanaugh, you know, he objected to Kavanaugh on that ground, that he doesn't respect the Fourth Amendment, and he bailed out, and now he's supporting Kavanaugh.
Oh.
So, you know, that's why we have to be at the forefront. And when I talk about Judicial Watch, it's a little comparative advertising, because people still think I'm there. And, you know, that's my little baby. I don't want them to fail. I don't like Fitton. I don't think he should be running that organization. I think you should get a lawyer in there that knows what he's talking about, and also somebody who has better moral character. But I want Judicial Watch to succeed. This is my legacy.
I see. So if Tom Fitton stepped aside and someone else came into Judicial Watch, perhaps maybe that would be something that you would like. But of course, for now, people should go to freedomwatchusa.org to read about the various things that Larry is discussing with us: the petition to remove Robert Mueller, the petition to remove Jeff Sessions, of course, the citizens' grand juries. That's still scheduled to begin September 25th, Larry?
It is, and we're working on that right now. And that won't be the only citizens' grand jury. That's just step one. Okay,
in Dallas?
Dallas, yes. But we're going to be coming to your hometown at some point. And, you know, we're going to do this peacefully and legally. We're not vigilantes. We're not Antifa. We're not Black Lives Matter. We're not these other groups. We're going to do it peacefully and legally. And also, it's an educational experience for the American people to know that they can rise up themselves. It's not Larry Klayman who's the superhero. It's the American people who are. And, you know, the reason I took that theme, other than the fact that I kind of like Wonder Woman, is the fact that, you know, these people, these superheroes, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Batman, etc., they couldn't rely on government to do their job. The government wasn't doing it. So they had to do it for the people of Gotham City or the United States or the world. And that's what I'm saying right now. We have to do it. You know, when, again, getting back to Fitton and Judicial Watch, he goes on TV and he says, I got these documents, and gee, I hope the Justice Department's going to do something. Okay?
Right.
Basically, you can't wait for them to do something. We have to take matters into our own legal hands.
Yeah.
And right. So I would like to see Judicial Watch join me, but it's not going to happen as long as Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, because he's not a lawyer and he doesn't want to do that. And they have young lawyers who really are not trial lawyers. And that's the difference between Freedom Watch and Judicial Watch. I want people to know that difference, particularly since people still think that I'm at Judicial Watch.
Right. And one of the things that I really admire about you, Larry, is the taking matters into your own hands. And somebody else who's doing that, of course, is Ryan Bundy, who you worked with the Bundys when they were wrongfully incarcerated. And that's really troubling to learn that Jeff Sessions is now trying to overturn that situation. I mean, it was so egregious, the prosecutorial misconduct. And now, of course, Ryan Bundy is running for governor of Nevada. What can you tell us about the progress of Ryan's campaign? How's he doing?
He's doing well. He's running as an independent. He didn't have to go through the primary, so he will be on the general election ballot in November of this year. And he needs to generate some press right now, because he needs to do what Trump did. I've told him that, to get out there so people will know that this is a man of tremendous character. Mm-hmm. He's extremely bright. More than anyone else in that trial, he was responsible for having this indictment thrown out. I was there giving advice because this judge wouldn't let me in. But I was doing other things for Bundy. I had lawsuits in D.C. and all kinds of other things. And I was working with Ryan. I was working with Klayman. But he's a brilliant guy. And he and his entire family have tremendous principles. They are true credit. And you know, there's something that's interesting here, too. You know, there's a TV show out there now with Kevin Costner. It's called Yellowstone. And I believe that TV show was patterned after the Bundys in some way. They've, you know, toned it down for Hollywood. But it's about a rancher near Yellowstone, and developers are trying to take the land away from the rancher. And there's all kinds of politics and sleaze and everything else involved. And the Bundys are 100 times more courageous than I like Kevin Costner, by the way, as an actor, so I'm not knocking him. It's one of my favorites. But they're more courageous than this character in Yellowstone because they risked their lives for what they believed in. They were willing to do life imprisonment on a principle. The government wanted to let them out. Government, I use that term loosely. The Justice Department wanted to let them out. They were desperate for time served after they did 2 years unjustly, and they said, no, we're not going to accept that. We want to tell our story to the jury. Of course, the government wanted them to plead to one count of the felony. But they said, we're not pleading anything. They said, you guys are the ones that have committed the crimes, not us. And recently I filed a lawsuit, as you may know, for two of the defendants that were indicted with the Bundys, Rick Loveland and Stephen Stewart, who were acquitted with government had no evidence. And it's out there. And fortunately, this case also was assigned to a recent Trump judge. If it went to a Democrat judge, forget that one too, with the politics today. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some justice because Jeff Sessions claimed that he was going to do a review of the prosecutorial misconduct that we all know about. You can see that at ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org, and I hope people will support Cliven. We have a case pending to have the land declared owned by the people of Nevada, not the federal government, to get the Bureau of Land Management off Bundy's backs in the future. They'll be back if there's a Democrat president for sure. Wow. So, we're trying to prevent this from happening again. And Sessions, it struck me when he claims he's doing a review, is that just a few weeks ago I'm in court for sentencing of one of the defendants who was convicted. Had nothing to do with the Bundys, but they set him up. And who's there? The same prosecutor. So how can they be there if Sessions is conducting a review? And then these prosecutors file a notice of appeal about a week later. I mean, Sessions is just a despicable human being. Wow. And to have him as Attorney General is a real threat to this country. He needs to be removed peacefully and legally.
I feel like so many people who are commenting on these individuals in Washington, D.C., it's like they're commenting in the same sort of way that you and I would talk about Kevin Costner. We see him on the screen, he appeals to some people, he doesn't appeal to some people, you form an opinion about him. But when I hear you speak about Jeff Sessions and your personal interactions with cases that he's actually doing things on, this is actual insight into the man's character. Like, why would he do this? It doesn't make sense. I mean, the Bundys, in my experience, are among the kindest type of people you could imagine meeting. Like, immediately, Cliven and Ryan, I mean, they're just such nice, genuine people who ooze integrity. I mean, I feel like there's a certain type of person who sees a guy wearing a cowboy hat and he's a rancher and they come to some conclusion. Ryan, of course, suffered an automotive accident at a very young age, so he's got a little bit of a physical disability, and I think that people are coming to conclusions about them that are very unfair. It's troubling to hear what you say about Sessions, but I know that you're correct. There's a lot of people that are feeling helpless, Larry.
Yeah, and let me tell you why I'm so passionate about this. Because when I was a young lawyer, Jason, to get a job, so to speak, to become a trial lawyer at the Justice Department, that was the highest calling. I believed it was. Mm-hmm. We're going back to 1979. Okay, that's a long time ago. And I believe in the Justice Department. I believe in our justice system, but it's become so perverted, so corrupt. And when you see an attorney general that is perverting an institution that you loved, it really gets under my skin, and I take it personally because I do believe in the justice system. I'm an optimist. I wrote a column last week for Newsmax on Klayman's Court, and I was quoting Winston Churchill, and they said a pessimist looks for something that is going well and looks for things that can go wrong. An optimist looks for reasons that things can go right. Okay, and I am an optimist. I'm just paraphrasing. Churchill was more eloquent than I was. And, we have to do what we can. And our founding fathers risked their lives and pledged their honor and gave up their sacred fortune, their fortune to found a new nation. And we have to stand up to these people. And one of the reasons I love President Trump is that he does stand up to them. He's a little coarse sometimes. You know, he's not quite as smooth as some other people can be. But you know what? He's the first president in my lifetime that's telling it like it is about the corruption on the courts, the corruption in the Justice Department, and everything else that needs to be made great again in this country. He's not sugarcoating it. You know, I watched George W. Bush. I don't know how much time we have left at that funeral for McCain. Oh. You know, the hypocrisy of this country is McCain was not a good person. He was a terrible person. He accomplished little to nothing in his senatorial career. I can't think of anything he accomplished.
No, he financed ISIS. He went and met with terrorists in Syria. He did a lot of stuff.
Right, and you see these people sitting there like George W. Bush are chewing gum and eating candy. Okay, and I mean, it's like they went to the movies. Okay? And I said, my God, I mean, you know, this is what this country's come to, is that we all get together because we're part of this club at the National Cathedral in Washington, and gee, it's all cool because we were invited and President Trump wasn't invited. You know what? I think President Trump probably believes what Groucho Marx said. He doesn't want to be a member of a club that would have him as a member. And I don't want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member, because this club is corrupt to the core. I don't want to be part of it. And that's what I love about this president. That's why we need to save his presidency, because by saving his presidency, we'll save this country.
So real quickly, Larry, to wrap up, we haven't touched on Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen, and there have been big developments for both of those two guys since our last conversation. What do you see those judgments? How will that affect President Trump?
Well, it's not good because it gives Mueller a free hand to go further. It's likely that by the end of this week, Roger Stone will be indicted. He's predicted that.
Wow.
It's likely that others will be indicted as well. But this emboldens him to write an impeachment report at a minimum. And, you know, now he's got the wind at his back, and that's the risk that occurs here. Now, the next trial for Manafort, which is going to start next week, is in front of the biggest political hack judge in D.C., federal judge, Amy Berman Jackson. We talked about her. She is just a terrible person, and she's so political. And so Manafort's in for a rough time, but I do believe that in the end he'll probably be pardoned, and he knows that.
Huh. Wow. Well, it's very troubling for me, and I think a lot of viewers, to see how, the justice system has become, it's almost like a gambling hall where you're Monty Hall, let's make a deal, They're constantly trying to get people to take these plea agreements so that they can, just make their next move on this political chessboard, and Robert Mueller is there playing chess. It's a very troubling situation. I'm always delighted to have you. You shine a light on some of this really dark stuff that people cannot seem to understand, and I appreciate your optimism. Is there anything you'd like to leave everybody with before we go?
Join our Justice League at freedomwatchusa.org. We need the support. We need the help. There are about 30,000 people who have signed the petition to have me named special counsel. Whether that happens or not, we have the citizens' grand juries. We can do it on our own. But Jason, I say this, is that, I'm critical because I'm trying to get things to change. There are people in this world that I really like and care for. You're one of them who are very courageous. There are others out there, and we patriots need to rise up and do what we can peacefully and legally to keep our country, because we're losing it.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you, Larry, for those kind words and for everything that you're doing. You really are putting yourself in the crosshairs, and that's not a comfortable position. So I definitely want to encourage people to go to freedomwatchusa.org and also sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. Go to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. You can become a monthly sponsor. You're going to enjoy exclusive programming there and help me carry on this fight and continue having guests like Larry Klayman. I so appreciate your legal insights, Larry, and it's great to see you again. I look forward to our next in-person meeting, and I am definitely going to be in Dallas on September 25th. I'm really interested in these citizens' grand juries.
Jason, I look forward to seeing you there, and thank you for everything that you do. I really appreciate you and Crowdsource the Truth.
Thank you, Larry. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good
See everybody tomorrow. Take care.